What does inter mean? Inter means between. Okay, so internet means the network of computers. Okay, and you can, if you access the internet, you can use the information. You can access the information in other computers. That's the internet. Inter means between computers. A network between computers. Do you understand? There are several bartering sites you can check out. Bartering sites. What's a site? Site is a place where something happens. Okay? So in this case, sites means what? A website. Website is a place in the internet where you can find information about something. Alright? Sites you can check out. What does that mean, check out? It means you can look at. Alright? The biggest issue on the internet is trust. The biggest issue. What is issue? Issue is an important part of something. Alright? That matters. Alright? Or a subject that people are arguing about is an issue. Okay? How do you know that the other person is someone who can be trusted? You don't really until you make the trade. Of course, most sites ban traders who make false claims about their goods and services. Of course, most sites ban traders. What is ban? Ban means to officially not allow something, alright? And the similar words are forbid, right? Or prohibit. You should know these words. They appear often. They are used often. Most sites ban traders, okay, who make false claims about their goods and services. False claims. What does false mean? False means not true. Okay. Claim. What is a claim? Claim means say that something is true. Okay. They also ban those who fail to complete the trades they agreed to. Who fail to. What does fail mean? Fail means to not succeed in something, alright? To complete the trades they agreed to. What does that mean, agree to? If you agree to something, you say you will do it, okay? So you accept that. So internet bartering is becoming more trustworthy. What does that mean, trustworthy? Means it's worth the trust. What would that mean? You can trust on it. Okay? Next part.
In modern times, there are some other issues involved in bartering. One is taxation. Some people believe you don't owe taxes when you barter, but they're wrong. In the US, you must report the value of the items you bartered and pay taxes on them. This is relatively new, though. It was in the late 20th century that laws were enacted to force people to pay taxes on bartered goods and services. Other countries have similar laws as well. However, at the basic level, the government doesn't expect people to report bartering for tax purposes. So I don't think anyone expects you to report the computer games you and your friend exchanged and to pay taxes on them.
Okay, what is this part about? It's about some other issues involved in bartering. And she mentioned one thing, which is taxation, okay? In modern times, there are some other issues involved in bartering. One is taxation. What is taxation? Taxation is the system by which the government collects tax. Okay? Some people believe you don't owe taxes when you barter, but they're wrong. You don't owe taxes. What does that mean, owe? If you owe something or some money, you have to pay that to a person. You have to pay that amount to a person. Owe taxes when you barter. What does tax mean? Tax means the money that you pay to the government, which the government uses for public services, okay? Like for your health or education or defense of the country, things like that. In the US, you must report the value of the items you bartered and pay taxes on them. You must report the value. What does report mean? Report means to tell what happened to a person involved, all right? So, report the value of the items. What is a value? Value is how important or useful something is, all right? Of the items you bartered. What is an item? Item is a thing on a list or in a collection of things, all right? This is relatively new, though. This is relatively new. What does that mean? What does relative mean? Relative means compared to other things, okay? This is relatively new, though. What does though mean? Though is like but, right? This is relatively new, though. The same as, but this is relatively new, right? It was in the late 20th century that laws were enacted to force people to pay taxes on bartered goods and services. It was in the late 20th century. 20th century. What is century? Century is 100 years. Cent means 100. In $1 there are 100 cents. So cent means 100. Uh, 20th century is when? It's 19 something. Do you understand? When is the first century? First century is from year 1 to 100. And the second century is what? From year 101 until 200. So the 20th century is 19 something. That law, it was in the late 20th century that laws were enacted to force people to pay taxes on bartered goods and services. Laws were enacted. What does that mean? Enacted. Enact means to make something a law, okay? So the law was made to force people. What does that mean, force? If you force people to do something, you make them do it, or even though they don't want to do it. To pay taxes on bartered goods and services. Other countries have similar laws as well. Similar laws as well. What does similar mean? Similar means having the same characteristic. You understand? So it means alike. Okay. Laws alike. Okay, as well. However, at the basic level, the government doesn't expect people to report bartering for tax purposes. However, at the basic level, what does basic mean? Basic means simple, right? At the simple level. Level is the height of something, all right? So it means at the simple area. The government doesn't expect people to report bartering for tax purposes. Doesn't expect. What does that mean, expect? Expect means believe that something will happen. Okay? People to report bartering for tax purposes. What's the purpose? Purpose is the reason why you do something. Okay? For tax purposes mean for tax. So I don't think anyone expects you to report the computer games you and your friend exchanged and to pay taxes on them. So, at a low level, basic level, they don't tax. They don't collect tax for bartering. Okay, if you exchange cards, okay, or your toys, things like that. When you were young, they don't collect tax from you. Let's go to the next.
Another issue is called fair exchange. Basically, it concerns whether or not what you're receiving is a fair trade for your goods or services. Many barterers get less than the fair value that they deserve. Of course, it's their responsibility to know the value of their goods and services. Finally, bartering isn't an ideal way to store wealth. If you're bartering with food, the food might spoil. Thus, your wealth won't keep for very long. However, money can be put in a bank and then be used later to purchase many things. As for bartering, to get something new, a person must want what you have to offer. Since this isn't always the case, many people have trouble surviving solely by bartering. For some things, they simply have to use money.
Okay, what is this part about? This part is about some other issues involved in bartering. The second issue was what? Fair exchange, all right? Many barterers get less than the fair value than they deserve, okay? And the other issue was what? Bartering isn't an ideal way to store wealth, all right? For example, for food, all right? It gets spoiled, okay? So you can't keep the value for a long time. And what else? If you want to do bartering, what should be the case? The person who has what you want needs to want what you have, okay? But that's not always the case. So you can't solely survive by bartering. You have to spend money, use money in a lot of cases. Another issue is called fair exchange. What does fair mean? Fair means reasonable, right, just. Basically, it concerns whether or not what you're receiving is a fair trade for your goods and services. It concerns, what does that mean? It concerns, means it's related to, okay? Whether or not what you're receiving is a fair trade for your goods and services. Many barterers get less than the fair value that they deserve. Less than the fair value that they deserve. What does deserve mean? Deserve means they have the right to have it, okay? They should have it because of what they did or who they are. Of course, it's their responsibility to know the value of their goods and services. Of course, it's their responsibility. What does that mean? Responsibility is, if something's your responsibility, you are the one who has to deal with that, okay? And you should take decisions relating to that. To know the value of the goods and services. Finally, bartering isn't an ideal way to store wealth. Isn't an ideal way. What does that mean, ideal? Ideal means the best possible, okay? The best possible way to store wealth. What does that mean, store? Store means to put something in a container or another place. And leave it there until it's needed.